Why is this drink showing up everywhere looking like this, when it is really supposed to look like this? Or is it supposed to actually look like this? Down the rabbit hole we go of the Queen's Park Swizzle. Today, we're gonna make a Queen's Park Swizzle, and I have a question about this cocktail, and I don't know the answer. Why is everyone, and yes, everyone, making it this way, with the Angostura bitters floating on top? So stick around and we'll figure out if this really is the wrong way to make it, and try to answer the question of where this version comes from. And you might end up maybe even more confused by the end of this than you are right now, or maybe you'll have your own hypothesis or conclusions. The Queen's Park Swizzle is a Caribbean cocktail from the Queen's Park Hotel in Trinidad. What's really unusual about this is how we know about it. It's not from a Caribbean newspaper, a vintage cocktail book, or something found by Don the Beachcomber in his travels. Instead, it was brought to the world in 1946 by Trader Vic, who first shared the recipe in Trader Vic's Book of Food and Drink. Vic called rum his meat, the nectar of the gods, and the drink of the ancients. And when recognizing bars and bartenders in his book, he calls out the Queen's Park Hotel and the Queen's Park Swizzle as one of the most delightful forms of anesthesia given out today. He also says that the Queen's Park Swizzle is one of the drinks that helped to popularize rum. He gives his recipe as half a large lime, mint leaves, 3 ounces of an 86 proof Demerara rum, 2 dashes of Angostura bitters, half an ounce of simple syrup. And you're supposed to squeeze the lime into the glass with some mint leaves, fill with ice, and then add the rest of the ingredients, swizzle until the glass frosts over. The garnish for this is just a mint sprig, and no layering of Angostura bitters is involved. Now, Trader Vic shared an identical recipe in the 1948 Bartender's Guide, and then again in the 1972 Bartender's Guide, but this time he changed the rums from 3 ounces of an 86 proof Demerara rum to 1 ounce of a light Puerto Rican rum, 1 ounce of a dark Jamaican rum, and 1 ounce of a 151 Demerara rum. He also does not call to add mint before swizzling, and to add the lime shell and the mint after. Now, the change in rums is not that unique, and you probably see more recipes today calling for another rum, Angostura rum, since Angostura is the only current distillery in Trinidad, which would make you think that this would be the authentic rum for the Queen's Park Swizzle. But while Angostura has been making bitters in Trinidad since 1875, they have only been making rum since the 1940s, and the style of rum they make is the column still style rum. And while Trinidad was once a Spanish colony, it had been a British colony since 1797, and the rum coming from Trinidad was in the English style, with notable distillers like the now defunct Caroni. Angostura started making rum in the column still style rum to fit their needs, since rum is the base of Angostura bitters, and later to sell in bulk to companies like Bacardi before making their own rums. Now, that doesn't help answer the question of what rum was originally used at the Queen's Park Hotel in the 1930s and the 1940s, or what Trader Vic would have had upon his visit, which I assume would be in 1937 when he also visited Cuba. This was part of the full evolution from Hinky Dinks to Hinky Dinks brought to you by Trader Vic, the Bamboo Room, and soon after just Trader Vic's. But for now, we'll just take his word for it that it was an 86 proof Demerara rum, and that makes some sense since Trinidad is not too far from Guyana. And while that is accurate, I'm not going to do that today because I just did a video about dark rums, and in the dark rums, one of the rums I drank through was the Hamilton 86, which is a great rum. I love it, but on its own, I feel like it needs something else. So I'm going to blend a couple rums here, but you should do whatever you want if you're making one of these. So the first mention of the now infamous drink does not come from the hotel or even from the Caribbean, but from Trader Vic. And prior to him sharing this recipe, the only common cocktail to come up in reference to the Queen's Park Hotel is the Green Swizzle, a drink made with rum, lime juice, simple syrup, and wormwood bitters. And this is a known and very popular swizzle of the time. It's covered by David Wondrich, and you can find out more about it on Art of Drink as well. And when I was looking into this, I found many references to the Green Swizzle being served at the Queen's Park Hotel, and one reference to a Green Swizzle being made with Angostura bitters. That most likely was a reference to the Trinidad Green Swizzle, which was a drink made of carraptin, falernum, wormwood bitters, and Angostura, and that Angostura is a float. This is according to Beach Bum Berry and featured in his book Potions of the Caribbean. that caraptan is supposedly rum, lime juice, sugar, herbs, spices, and at the time that was bottled by Angostura. And the first recipe for that Trinidad green swizzle showed up in the Crab No Walk book by English historian Owen Rudder. So that gives us a hint of where that Angostura float may have come from or where it originated, but that's all we really know. No recipe prior to Trader Vic sharing one in 1946. Trader Vic recipes are often duplicates of other cocktails, slight variations, or his own recreations of something from a faraway place, and they're often very close to his other cocktails, like the Scorpion. He says it's just like one from Hawaii, but that seems like it can't be true. That's just like a fog cutter. But he does have this fascination and obsession with accuracy of Caribbean cocktails, especially the precise way to make a daiquiri, as he saw made in Cuba. So if they were floating the Angostura on the top at the Queen's Park Hotel, I think he would have made it that way. It wasn't just a random cocktail either. It's one of just 4 cocktails mentioned in his obituary in the New York Times. Now, as I was making this video, my original guess was that this float came from something like a Death and Company book, but then I did a little digging from recent history online, and in the 2000s, the Queen's Park Swizzle doesn't really show up often. It's not popular, and the few references don't show the Angostura float. But around 2010, this is several years before Beach Bump's Potions comes out, pictures show up online of the Queen's Park Swizzle being made with the float. Some even opt for the light rum to provide even more contrast. By now, the drink is popular, and most likely, this modern popularization of the drink comes from New York City in the early 2000s at bars like Julie Reiner's Flatiron Lounge and Milk and Honey, where they were serving this drink with an Angostura float. And this is most likely the origin to the modern popular version of the Queen's Park Swizzle to feature an Angostura float. Now, another theory I have is that the House of Angostura was pushing the Queen's Park Swizzle to become the official cocktail of Trinidad. Well, that part is a fact. And if you're Angostura, not only do you want to be using Angostura rum, but you obviously want to make sure that your precious baby, Angostura Bitters, is front and center for everyone to see. You add it to a cocktail and then you swizzle it, it's going to look like this. It's brown. Could be anything. But if you layer it on top, people are going to want to know. They're going to ask questions. What makes that drink so pretty? Yet another possibility, which is also just purely speculation from me, is that it evolved from one of the green swizzle recipes. Now, one of those historic green swizzles, with its green color, had an Angostura float, and the green would blend into the red on the top. I only bring this up because this is mentioned in Imbibe by David Wondrich for how the green swizzle was shared in 1912. Could it be that this look was replicated in the Queen's Park Swizzle by replacing the green-colored drink with some green-colored mint at the bottom? I don't know. So did the float come from the Queen's Park Hotel and Trader Vic just skip that step? Is it because of that Trinidad green swizzle? Possibly a marketing ploy by Angostura Bitters? Or could it have been a modern bartender making a drink that looked cool? I still don't know, but I think for the most part, these are probably all just coincidences. Modern bartenders may have thought it looked cool, and it turns out that prior to the recipe Trader Vic shared, there were swizzles with an Angostura float. Now, do I really care that much? No. This just stems from the first recipe we have says to make it a certain way, and everyone, like everyone else today, makes it differently. And I just want to try to pinpoint that evolution, like when did this happen? Which I haven't done. But there is something positive to be said about this look. This drink did not take off in popularity until like the 2010s. And that was because people were making it this way. It's striking and has a very unique and iconic look to just a swizzle drink with some mint in the bottom. So had whoever started to do this at that time not done this, we probably would not be talking about the Queen's Park Swizzle, or not very much today. So I choose to swizzle everything together with no float, and let's make a Queen's Park Swizzle right now. right, let's try the Queen's Park Swizzle. I think the first thing to know is that this is not a mojito. And I think that gets conflated because of the modern day look of this by using a light rum. And some people thinking that you muddle the mint. If you want to do that, you can. But just because a cocktail shares some common ingredients doesn't mean that it's based on the thing that you think it is or that's more popular. This drink is obviously an evolution of the swizzles that were incredibly common in the Caribbean in the 1800s and early 1900s, and those ones were well known. The green swizzle was an incredibly popular drink pre 1930s. We don't often know the complete historical timeline. We don't of this drink. We don't know about the mojito either. There is no consensus as to that. And anytime we're talking about lime juice, rum, and the addition of sugar, no one can really lay claim to that. Since we are not muddling the mint, and we're not even really disturbing the mint very much while we're swizzling, there's not a ton of mint that comes through, but I'm okay with that. One of the reasons I really don't like mojitos is if you get something really muddled and you get those shards of mint through your glass. This has that layering where your lime juice and your mint start at the bottom, the lime juice incorporates throughout. It gives a decent amount of acidity, but it's not as tart as a daiquiri or a Mai Tai or even a Planter's Punch where you're measuring out your juice. It's going to be very inconsistent if you do it that way. So, maybe squeeze in a lime shell and then add in half an ounce of lime juice to make sure that you have enough lime juice. But not too sweet, subtle hints of Angostura, but mainly this is a rum-forward cocktail, getting lots of dilution from your ice, from swizzling. So that's why you do want to use something a little bit higher proof than a 80 proof rum. So in this case, I use an 86 proof, and I use two 86 proof rums. And if I was revising this a little bit more for my taste, I would do more than just a couple of dashes of Angostura. I'd probably do like 4 or 5. So where did the float come from? Well, we don't know exactly. There's historical references to the float, modern day references to the float, and at the end of the day, there's really no right and wrong. And if it wasn't for that reinterpretation of the old school version using a light rum and then the float on top, it probably wouldn't be something that we're all talking about today. So if you enjoyed this video, give this video a like below, subscribe to this channel if you have not already. If you want to support this channel more, go check out my Patreon page, and otherwise I will see you on the next one.